Do you remember your first toy? Your first. I clearly don't. However, I do remember my Kentucky Fried Chicken and McDonald's playsets very fondly. But I do remember the exact moment I got my first Transformer. Hello everybody, welcome back to PopCon. It's a Gen X thing like myself. I'm Victor, and tonight, the story of how I got my first Transformer. Not the first important toy I ever got, the second. I didn't know who they were in fall 1984 when they debuted, but that would soon change. In the new year of 1985, they would soon invade my life and my living room. Still enamored with G.I. Joe and He-Man, I took little notice of the new Transformers toy line that had arrived or the accompanying cartoon that debuted in September of 1984. There was little more than the strategic commercials for both comic and toys, if they were broadcast in your area and you could catch them. The cartoon debuted on Saturday mornings for the first 13 episodes only. Already having a Saturday viewing ritual, I may have missed their premiere. That is until early 1985, when Greg Lamb came to school with a black and purple box. Covered in Japanese writing, Greg's dad had brought this toy back from a recent trip with his family in Japan. The box was closed, but the window showed clearly a gray and black handgun. Yeah, I bet you can't imagine something like that coming to school nowadays. But back then, we thought nothing of it, and I was intrigued. When Greg told me it was called a Transformer, and his name was Megatron, the leader of the Decepticons, I wanted to know more. Showing me photos on the box demonstrating the steps of how this handgun went from weapon to robot figure, my mind was blown. I had to have one. Quickly, I was searching channels and found the cartoon had just joined my after-school favorites each weekday afternoon. It had apparently transitioned to weekdays once the cartoon reached its syndication requirements, and its short run on Saturday morning was over. It was the new year, and I was able to catch the complete start of the series. You know, when Bumblebee was like a UFO and they lived on Cybertron, hadn't even got to Earth yet. And I didn't even have to sacrifice watching my He-Man to catch it, but I would have. It took only the opening narration and the images of the first characters transforming from robot to alt mode that I was hooked. My mother knew it. Even with Christmas just past, she heard me talk about these things incessantly. I was now looking through catalogs. They were like porn for prepubescent kids searching for the next big thing in toys in the 80s, the ultimate generation for action figures. I would walk the toy aisles on my way home from school at Payless just to catch a glimpse. Still a novice, I was trying to learn every character, the story, their background. I was just kind of absorbing everything possibly I could about each and every one of these figures, these characters. The toy aisle is where kids could learn the names and determine the good guys and the bad guys and brush up on the story elements that you might be missing by not reading the comics, which I didn't. You were content in the toy aisle. No sense of time. Holding boxes and blister cards, just staring, reading the packaging for what seemed like forever and dreaming about opening that box and having that great plastic smell and finally having the figures you dreamed of. And then, that surprise visit to Kmart. That was like the holy grail of toy shopping back in my day. My mother was a goddess. Sensing my need to go to the toy aisle and talking up a storm about these new transforming robots, she walked with me over to the world of endless possibilities. What they could do with plastic in the 80s was nothing short of a miracle. "You can pick one," she said. I can still remember those most precious of mom words. But which? And it was not limited. These were the long gone days of packed toy shelves. Multiple toy aisles for boys' toys. Toy departments were vast, and with so many choices in the 80s, aisles and aisles of shelf space was dedicated to the legalized drug of 100% injected molded plastic. I was going to get my fix, but it would cost her. Sifting through countless blister packs and window boxes, Mom hadn't given me a limit, not yet. But I skipped those mini cars and their minimal price points. I wanted something bigger, more substantial. I went right for what is now considered the deluxe-sized figure. Hey everybody, Victor here. Pardon the interruption, but thank you for coming to PopCon, your connection to pop culture, but mostly the 80s. If you're enjoying this at all, show me some love. Give me a like, and please click the subscribe. It would really help out. Thanks. And now, on with the show. I couldn't believe this was happening. We didn't get a lot of toys or gifts outside of special occasions. My parents knew how to say no. But with a promise not to leave without one of these new and exciting toys that changed from one thing to another, it was my turn to have one. Autobot cars were taunting me everywhere my eyes could see, and then there was even more loaded around at the end cap. These things were the biggest Christmas toy in 1984, and I had totally missed their announcement, their explosion onto the scene. Probably too obsessed with Masters of the Universe, or more realistically, but there was very limited outlets we had as kids to know what things were coming, what was being released or debuting. It was a very small town and a big world, so when toys hit shelves, you often just had to discover them there. There was no shortage of inventory, even so soon after the holidays. Now, I don't remember seeing the Jets, the Seekers, but amongst all these bright-colored Autobot cars, I spotted a Tyrannosaurus. And then a Brachiosaurus, which, by the way, we called Brontosauruses back then. Watch Flintstones, you know what I'm talking about. I could feel my mother behind me, probably thinking she just opened a can of worms. Worms that could get expensive. Nope, not a can of worms, though. Pandora's box. She was there with enthusiasm, sharing in my bright-eyed and obvious gratitude at this opportunity. Excited, I spoke each of their names out loud, if I had seen them in the show, how cool they were, what kind of character they played. When I reached for a larger one, maybe Optimus Prime, she stopped me, reminding me she did have to stick within a budget under that price point. Well, that was no issue for me. I knew if I complained or whined, there would be no toy in my hot little hands when we left that store, so I moved on. There was no lack of choices. Her humoring me was starting to fade as I took too long between a Dinobot and an Autobot car. I knew I had to pick. There was not going to be one of those, oh, just grab both scenarios. That was not the kind of world I grew up in. I think she egged me on to choose one or the other, giving her 2 cents. It was probably just subtly urging me to hurry the hell up. Well, it felt like a game show where an audible countdown clock was looming and time was running out. With 2 in hand, but with complete confidence, I returned one to the shelf while verbally justifying my choice. This must have surprised my mother, as having shown little interest in cars, I had returned Grimlock the Dinobot and handed her the box with the bright green tow truck inside. Thinking back, she may have been very proud of my choice. A green tow truck with some orange highlights and black and yellow safety lines on the side. His name was Hoist. He was an Autobot architect and was featured in the show. I knew him and I wanted it. Maybe I liked his colors. He certainly wasn't flashy like Prowl or Jazz. But anyone who knows the G1 Hoist knows he's kind of robust, and I wanted something with meat, kind of like my meals, someone with a little weight. He was thick, and I thought picking him up was getting me more for the money. Joyful and relieved of my choice, Mom took it right to the register, paid her $5.95 graciously, and of course handed it to me as we walked out so I could hold it all the way home. It was boxed in his vehicle alt mode with those same successive pictures demonstrating the steps to transform, although there would be full instructions inside, of course. And then incredible artwork of Hoist the robot in action to show you what you should expect after the transformation. Of course, the limitations of 80s action figures, especially of these that were intricately engineered puzzles, made it impossible for any of these action poses depicted to translate to your figure itself. You were lucky if the arms moved up and down. Well, this would start my love affair with this franchise, and it would go on for years, and I would withstand the death of a father figure, as well as a craze that went as far as the Happy Meal. Since that day in 1985, Hoist has stayed with me in all my homes for almost exactly 38 years. He survived when I had to put all my toys away as I transitioned to high school, and was there and ready when I needed him again decades later when accepting my love of toys and being an adult collector. He and the rest were a lot like Woody from Toy Story, understanding the phases of a boy's life, willing to be put away and just waiting for that moment when playtime would return. I proudly display him as my only G1 Transformer left of my original collection from the 80s. And yes, I still do sometimes transform him. He's a little war-torn, and I think about using a chrome pen on him, or at least replacing those original stickers with reproductions. But there's just something about him. This way, the way he is now. His real wear and tear is a reminder of the years we have been together. He matches my own wear and tear. I have this more modern counterpart here. This is Hoist, but the weight of this Toyota pickup, this original with the actual rubber Desert Dog tires, a real off-road brand, just like the original Optimus Prime sported. He reminds me of everything I once was, everything I remember about that heyday of the 80s toys and the accompanying cartoon media. How toys used to be made, how they made us feel. That fateful trip to Kmart, my first Transformer, and of course, my mother. Now, just wait until I tell you about the time she bought me my first doll. So, do you remember that first important toy? That magical one that flipped the switch and got you hooked? Let me know who it was in the comments. Let me know what the toy or the action figure was and what franchise it came from. I'd love to hear about those memories and any of those great favorites from the era of endless toy options. If you enjoyed that story, please show me some love by giving me a like and click the subscribe for more PopCon, your connection to the greatest pop culture from that era. Now, don't forget to go back and look at some other fantastic shows from PopCon like this one. And remember, X marks the spot. Until next time.